Welcome, everybody, to episode 28 of UnHacked. And Mario, I haven't said this in a while, but UnHacked, I came up with this title. It is a deliberate misnomer because the truth is 97% of businesses or breaches could have been prevented, like basic cybersecurity measures, the stuff we talk about week after week, preventable. But once you've been hit, you cannot get completely unhacked, right? We talk a lot about the emotional damage, the financial damage. We don't want to go there. Last week, we had Joseph on here. Phenomenal episode, probably my favorite episode to date. And that was kind of the point he made over and over again is like, you're insurance guy. You only want to see me once a year to write a check. You never want to talk to me during the year after you've written that check. You never want a cybersecurity claim. So, week after week, we're here and we are here to empower busy and overwhelmed business owners to outsmart the Russian hackers. We want to keep you out of their sights, out of their scope. And if you get in that scope, we want to prevent everything that they could throw at you. So we're going to talk about the best practices, the 97%, the basics, right? And how to get those in place. And then at the end of the episode, like we do every week, we're going to close that 3% gap. Because if I'm telling you we can get you 97% secure, what the hell do we do with that other 3%? So that's always our closer. So I am Justin Shelley, CEO of Phoenix IT Advisors. I work with businesses kind of all over. We're in the Dallas area. We're pretty heavy in northern Nevada, moving into Idaho and Utah. And I am here. We're missing one. We usually have Bryan here, but Bryan bailed on us, so we are
stuck with me.
Just my good buddy Mario. Mario, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you're from, all that kind of stuff.
Mario Zaki, owner of Mastech IT. We are located in our brand new office, brand new facility in Ramsey, New Jersey, and we service the entire New York, New Jersey area, some Pennsylvania. We just like Justin said, we'll do go all over the place. But we've been in business for 20 years, and a lot of satisfied customers.
All right, that's a lot of years, Mario. That's I don't know if you know statistics, right? For whatever they're worth, the probability of a new business surviving 5 years is. And I've heard different numbers, so I'm not going to throw a number out there. I just say it's not great.
Yeah.
And then of those that make it the next 5, that make it all the way to 10, really, really not great. And so, what did you say? 25?
20.
20.
But I remember after because that statistics has been around for a while. I remember when I celebrated my 5-year anniversary. I was like so excited. I'm like, I made it.
It's like victory. We did it. We did it. Yeah. Okay. So today, congrats though on the office. That's a huge leap, huge step, and congrats on the 20 years. I've been doing IT consulting for. God, 1997 is when I went in. So we're coming up on 30 years, but I can't say it's been a straight line. Things went great. 9/11 hit. That kind of knocked me down a few notches. I actually got out of IT and went into aviation for a little while, got back into IT, renamed the company. So, it's been a lot's gone on, but I can't leave it. I keep trying to quit IT and keep trying to quit, and I can't. So I just keep coming back. Here I am, damn near 30 years later. So nice. Anyway, back on track. Today, we are going to talk about how to make sure all of your critical data is backed up. And then we're also going to break down, usually I look for headlines, news articles, current events of data breaches that we can learn from. But today, this is my favorite and least favorite type of security event that we're going to break down because this is real world, firsthand information. So that I think that's where we learn the most lessons. So after we wrap that up, as always, like I've already said, we're going to bring this 97% formula to a full 100%. Don't tell my attorney and don't tell my insurance provider that I'm promising 100% because they all tell me I can't do that. But unofficially, when you get to 100%, because the bottom line is we're just trying to protect you, your business, your money, your bank account from the likes of Boris Grishenko, I don't know. I use this guy because I wanted a name for a cybersecurity or a cyber villain. And I just Googled it. I've never even seen the movie. Apparently it's from a James Bond show. I'm going to have to go back and watch it, but he's the guy that I'm going to pick on. He's not real. He can't sue me unless there's some other Boris Grishenko out there that comes out. Who knows? All right. here we go. So we kind of start with the current cybersecurity event, and you threw a curveball at me today as we were prepping. And I guess you had a couple of, 2 in a week, right? Just some kind of out of left field calls from somebody who has dealt with a pretty significant event. So I'm just going to punt the ball to you, Mario. What happened? Who did it happen to?
So we do normal marketing, to prospects, and stuff like that. And we actually called them to follow up on the marketing we sent, and 2 in 1 week tell us perfect timing. Let's set up an appointment. Let's do it. One of them actually wanted an appointment the same day. The other one we sat with yesterday. And one of them did not have cybersecurity insurance. Their email got compromised, and they ended up wiring $100,000 to a hacker. The one that we spoke to yesterday, I'm not sure if they had cybersecurity insurance or not, but very similar. Their emails got hacked, and they wired $175,000 in to somebody overseas or somewhere. Now with the one yesterday, I actually saw the email chain that they had, and they started off just conversating with their, like, a normal customer of theirs.
So they thought, that's what I was going to ask. They thought this was a customer / client.
Yeah. So
okay.
They thought, well, in the beginning, it was actually a conversation that they were having with a customer or a vendor.
Okay, a vendor. Okay.
And then what ended up happening is, supposedly, I don't know, maybe, I think they said like a month ago or something, one of the users, that same user that was with the email, they clicked on a link.
Oh, okay.
The hacker then gained access to their email. Now, they never, from what we saw, the hackers never gained access to their computer. They never gained access to anything besides their email box. And then,
interesting.
And then what the hacker ended up doing is, I guess, like what we've said, they probably analyzed every email that was going in and out. They probably used AI, and they found out, like, this one email chain was pretty valuable. They ended up, apparently it looks like they took like a copy of the whole email and then created a whole brand new domain, complete brand new domain. And it was a very unique domain. It was like a couple letters, and then, like, I think it was like typing afterwards or something like that. And what they ended up doing is they purchased a brand new domain, but instead of an I, they changed it to an L. You can't really identify this unless you know what you're looking for, and you're, like, zoomed in. If you're on your normal, like, small font, you're trying to fit, I had to literally zoom in, and I was able to see, on one day the conversation was with the I, the next, like, 2 days later, it was a conversation with an L.
Damn. And okay, so real quick, I want to interject that fonts can be a huge problem with this kind of thing. A lot of times you have to copy that text and dump it into like I put it in like Notepad or something like that doesn't use any fancy fonts to see what's really going on, because some fonts take 2 letters and combine them into one character. Like, it's just, there's some weird stuff that goes on with fonts. So yikes, that's tough.
And they literally, in the conversation, was like, "Hey, we didn't get your check. Can you resend your check?" And they were actually pretty smart. They're like, "Can you resend the check?" And something I didn't really read the full details of the conversation, but then apparently it says, well, actually, to speed up time, can you just send me can you send an ACH? Here's our ACH information.
Wow.
And $175,000 later. And they actually didn't notice it for like I think it was like 2 weeks.
Okay, so let me back up, and I think what you said was they sent prospect or whoever sent a check, a paper check, and then the bad actor, the fake vendor, came back and said, we didn't get the check.
Yes.
Send it again. Oh, wait, you know what? Never mind. On second thought, why don't you just do a quick wire transfer or ACH or whatever?
Exactly.
Okay. And I trust that the check that went out then had already been cashed. They weren't able to, I guess that's the one that was legitimate. So they've got a bill to pay. They couldn't really stop payment on that. And they've wired now money again. They can't stop payment on that because it's fraud. It's gone. Banks can't get that money back. Oh my God. Okay. This sucks. And is this the one that does have insurance or does not have insurance?
This is the one I believe has insurance.
Okay. And do you know, and I don't know how closely you're working with them, but do you know if they were able to get that money in a claim? Were they able to get that money back?
I mean, just as a disclaimer, these are not my clients. So,
right.
I mean, we're working on making them our clients.
Yeah.
But essentially, I don't think they will be able to get the money back, because when you do something like that, I think you only have like a week or so to get it back if the money is in the account.
At most. Yeah.
At most
it can be 24 to 48 hours, depending on the type of transaction. So yeah.
And chances are, once that money actually goes right into that account, it's pulled out or transferred.
Yep.
You know, like you're not going to be able to
close the account down. Yeah.
You know,
okay.
So, I mean, I know the first thing I told them to do is, you know, they have to go fill out a police report and stuff like that.
Right.
So if they were getting their money back, they wouldn't be filling out a police report. But this event, I think, happened. I think that whole thing happened actually in the beginning of August, and they didn't realize it until like towards the end of August, because the original vendor is like, hey, dude, you know, where's the money you told me you were sending? You know, or something. Like it went like I didn't really, you know, like they're living some pain. I didn't want to sit there and try to get like, you know, feel like I'm, you know, because they're also not a client of mine, so I don't want to ask personal questions. But it seemed like they didn't really completely realize it until like a few weeks later.
And this, okay, I mean, not planned, but this comes right back to, you know, as I introduced the episode today and talked a little bit about, you know, this intentional misnomer, the word unhacked. This is what I'm talking about. This is preventable. This is preventable stuff. And we'll get into that. We'll talk about how it could have been prevented. But damn it, once it happens, it's over, right? You're not getting that money back. Maybe you get it back from the insurance company, maybe. And maybe you don't. And it sounds like maybe, you know, in one case they may have, in the other case, no insurance, you're just screwed. But man, we've got to prevent this stuff. We've got to catch it earlier on. So looking at this one, and let's kind of dive into the one where they bought a new domain and they changed that one character. Imperceptible. Like I can't sit here and say, hey guys, here's a good strategy on not falling to that URL scam, you know, because it's so almost impossible to detect. But
no,
we can talk about
like, honestly, the way it looked, like I saw it, I hate to say it, but I think I probably would have fell for it myself.
That's what I'm saying.
The wiring. I wouldn't have done the wiring, and
that's where we're going to go. That's where we're going to go. So
yeah, the domain that you couldn't avoid it.
You can't tell on some of those. I mean, some of them you can, but that's assuming, by the way, that you've got nothing to do in your day. You're not overwhelmed. You're not stressed out. You're not overworked. You're not underpaid. And all you have to do is sit there and look at URLs and find out if they're fraudulent or not, right? If that is your game, you may or may not figure it out. But for the rest of us, for the humans in the room, you know, who are overworked, underpaid, stressed out, we're not sitting there and deep diving on every goddamn URL that we click. Unfortunately, we should be, but we just don't have that attention span. So what do we tell people, Mario? If you could have rewound the clock 2 months and this had been a client and you could have worked with them, what would you have taught them or showed them to do in order to prevent this?
Well, so what I probably would have, and I tell this to clients all the time, like anybody that comes up to you or emails you, if anybody emails you, they want to change their ACH information, like for their paycheck or any customer says, I need to change this, get on the phone and talk to them. I actually went through a very similar situation about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I was switching from TD Bank to Chase. I was sick of TD Bank and I switched over to Chase. Now I have a good amount of customers that will send me direct, every month they'll just send me an ACH payment for the amount. I sent out an email to the people that I know do this, and I told them, like, as of this date, I want to change, my bank account information. So please, here's my information. Call me to confirm this. And I'm doing their security, so I'm pretty confident in this. But I did not want to risk it. I didn't want that phone call. Like, hey, when I say, I'm like, oh, I haven't gotten paid in 2 months. I didn't like, oh no, we changed it. So I told them, like, here it is. Call me so we can go ahead and confirm it over the phone.
Can I ask, and tell me no if you don't want to answer this live on the air, but what percentage of your clients responded to that and called to confirm?
Well, I sent it to, now there isn't that many that actually sent it. It was a total of, I think, 7.
Okay.
And one of them replied. One of them actually called me.
So what'd you do with the other 6?
I called them. I'm like, hey, listen, I know I'm like, a couple of them replied saying you need to fill out this form. So I got the form, I sent it to them, and I called them like, hey, I sent you the form. I just want to make sure, it's this number. This is the number. Like, yeah, that's what we got. So, I had to take the initiative, which is fine.
Right.
My point is, you have to have a conversation, either over the phone,
you do.
if it's an employee, in person.
Yeah, and I asked that. I'm almost putting your clients on the spot, so I hate that question that I just asked. But it is in line with what I expected. Taking that extra step, it takes a few minutes, but it's so easy to get overlooked because we're so overwhelmed with everything we're doing day in and day out that 1 out of 7 took the security measure that will prevent this. And guys, this is why the Russian hackers are winning. Damn it. This is why. So, good for you. This is the world you live in. This is what we talk about week after week. It's what you talk about with your clients day in and day out. And so you're going to take those steps. But man, it's so hard to drive this message home to people. And so we've talked before about changing when ACH or wiring instructions are changed to make take that additional step to pick up the phone or verify another way. But one thing that was interesting in this that I hadn't really considered, I guess, is there were not ACH or wiring instructions on file already that were changed. They didn't exist, if I understand this correctly. It was, hey, send me a check. You know what, on second thought, let's go ACH this time. And so the same process needs to apply if you don't already have that information on file, or it's being changed, and I just wanted to clarify that. So every time payment information is added, changed, deleted, or whatever, verify. God, we're talking about $250,000 here, over $250,000 gone, right? Up in cyber smoke. It's just gone. Even if you get it back from the insurance company. I mean, listen, the last thing we want to do is put all these insurance companies out of business, because here's another scary truth. There's a lot of this going on, and insurance companies aren't able to pay out at the rate that we are increasing these breaches, right? So it's like eventually we're not even going to have insurance because this is getting so bad. That's kind of what's got my attention right now. So personally, I think we need to protect them as well.
No, I agree. Actually, I had a conversation with my Allstate agent a few months ago, and he was saying Allstate is getting out of the cybersecurity insurance business.
Yeah.
They don't want to do it. Now, Allstate is a pretty big company. They don't want to have it. What's going to end up happening is going to be a lot less insurance companies, and as you know, in every industry in the world, if there's still a high demand, but there's less insurance companies out there, the rates are all going to go up.
The price goes through the roof. Yeah. And that goes back to what Joe was telling us last week. The insurance guy that we had on here. Like I'm selling you insurance. You would think I would want you to buy more insurance, but I don't. I want you to buy more protection. I want you to prevent this stuff. I want you to never have to call me. So, all right. Let me bring my blood pressure back down a little bit, and we're going to move on to our weekly cybersecurity tip, which is what we named this episode after. So how, the 4 steps to securing all of our critical data. Now, Mario, have you ever had the experience where you meet with a prospect? Hopefully none of our clients feel this way, and I'll protect a few of mine who I have a hard time reaching and getting the right mindset out of them. But have you ever had somebody look you right in the eye and say, I don't have anything worth protecting?
Oh, absolutely.
None of my stuff's important. I don't have any data to worry about. So to combat that, I want to talk about this. I mean, we've dabbled with it before. I have a webinar where I talk about this quite a bit, but how is it that we protect our critical data? And step 1 is actually just identifying it. And so I'm gonna blast this off real quick, and then I want to kind of talk about it and get your take on this. But I would say build a spreadsheet, just a very simple spreadsheet. Column 1, what is the key business function or application that we're talking about? And there should be several of them at a minimum. We've got HR, we've got sales and marketing, we've got operations, and we've got finance. Like, just if it's nothing but those 4 basic ones, get those on a spreadsheet. And then that's column 1. What is the function, or what is the application within that function? And then column 2 is what type of data is involved. Column 3, where is that data stored? And column 4, what is your process for backing up, restoring, and verifying? So what are your thoughts? And let's start with column 1. Let's talk about how do we identify the key business functions or applications. And maybe we can do, let's pick a sample client. Do you have an industry that you focus on, Mario? Is there a specific industry?
Construction, engineering.
Let's just let's make a fake construction company that is a client of yours, and you're running through this list with them. What would be in column 1? What are some of the basic functions or applications that they use?
So, I mean, with some of them, it's going to be QuickBooks. Some of them are, software like what's called Procore, even Microsoft Outlook, like email, Microsoft SharePoint, Microsoft OneDrive. I mean, the regular server is holding critical data. I mean, there's AutoCAD, Revit. There's a bunch of programs that they all use. But
that's perfect. Let's. Did you have more? Sorry, I cut you off.
No. I mean, I can go on for a while because they're all different, but those are the critical ones.
So there's 6, right? Now, if I go back to my cute little 4-column table that I just described, we're going to hit these one at a time. So QuickBooks. What type of data is involved with QuickBooks?
So QuickBooks, most of it is going to be accounts receivable. Who owes you money? You want to keep track of who owes you money. A list of all your customers. And then in a lot of other cases is the accounts payable. What bills you've paid. You don't want to pay a bill twice. So you want to see what you've paid and, what check number and where you sent it and stuff like that.
Okay. So we've got, and you know what, we could build this column or this table just as complicated as we wanted. And I want this to be simple just for the sake of this conversation. But we could also talk about, hold on, I lost my complete train of thought there because I'm building this little table that I want. I'm gonna get back on track. It's okay. I was going off track anyways. So we've got client information, vendor information, accounts payable, accounts receivable. So 2 things. Number 1, this information is valuable to other people, to bad actors, to hackers, to Boris, whatever Russian guy, right? This is valuable information if they get a hold of it, number 1. And number 2, if your client was to lose this information, it's it's devastating. It can be very problematic. So this would be, if we were to put a risk on this, a score on it, this is way high up there. So that's the type of data. There's also going to be financial, like if you have the right access to QuickBooks, you can pull credit card numbers, bank account numbers, routing numbers, and stuff like that. So really, really high risk in our finance software. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I can take it even further. If they have full access to your QuickBooks, they could log in, change their account information in QuickBooks. So one of your customers pays one of your invoices, they're actually paying the hacker.
Yeah. So we want to keep people out of QuickBooks. No, that's fine. Okay, so if we're going to go down the line here, and let's look at Procore. So what kind of stuff is stored in Procore?
So Procore is like what the engineers in construction use. Like that's where they'll see their blueprints, adjust blueprints, create the blueprints for a job essentially.
So we've got this is our basic operations, how we conduct business day in, day out, processes, procedures, service delivery. Without this, like without QuickBooks, we can still deliver services. But without this, we're kind of dead in the water, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Outlook. What type of data? I mean, this is obvious. We don't need to spend a lot of time here. We're just going to call it communications. Mm-hmm. But potentially, we could have data like a lot of times people shouldn't, but they do send PII, personally identifiable information, stuff that could violate regulations depending on which industry you're in, if it's not encrypted. So we have to be pretty careful with this one as well. SharePoint. What do your clients, your construction clients, normally keep on SharePoint?
Well, again, they'll like PDFs of like drawings of the jobs that they're working on, the specs of like the jobs, and that's where every department, the electrician knows like what they need to have in stock, what they're doing, like all their data. Like it's Procore was the blueprints, then SharePoint they'll use for the actual PDFs of each job.
So we're
and
call
bids
this,
and stuff like that.
Call it intellectual property, IP, right? This is kind of where it's not tangible, but it's very valuable, right? Okay, servers. What these days? What are your clients keeping on servers? Because this is an interesting topic that we've already talked about as far as cloud versus on-prem. But what lives on servers these days?
So a lot of it is, it really is two schools. Like some want to go cloud, like with SharePoint, and then some want to keep it local. Same thing that they would normally put on SharePoint, they would put on.
So this is an either or, not an and usually, although sometimes it can be kind of a hybrid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And AutoCAD type of data, I mean, this is kind of where they're building the stuff we've already talked about, right?
Yeah. Very similar to Procore.
Okay. So we'll call this operations, process, service, delivery. Okay, now we're going to go back and we'll do this pretty quick because this is going to get boring as hell for people that don't care about this. But where does this data live? So let's talk about QuickBooks. Usually, are your clients using QuickBooks on-prem, like that they install locally, or are they using QBO? Both.
Some of them have it on the online. Some of them have locally. Usually, the people that have the server will have it locally.
Fair enough. Procore, where is that stored?
Again, some of it local, some of it on the server. Sorry, some of it local, some of it on the cloud.
Some of it cloud. Okay. Outlook is mostly cloud these days. You have anybody that has their in-house?
No.
I forgot the name of the server. That's beautiful. Exchange server. It's been a while.
We won't take on a client that has that. Like
I used to love Exchange server. Get me nerding out. Anyway, SharePoint is cloud. Servers are on-prem. I'm just going back to where this stuff lives. And then AutoCAD. Is that mostly on-prem, or do they have cloud storage for AutoCAD?
It's either or. It's very similar to like Photoshop. So like it's the program, but then the files may be stored local or on the cloud. A lot of it is local because it's such big files.
That was kind of my understanding with, I haven't done much with AutoCAD in a minute. So, all right, now the fun part, QuickBooks. And we have to divide this, and we're not going to deep dive on this, but if we have, QuickBooks installed locally, then our process to protect it is very simple, right? It's a data backup. And we could deep dive on data backups, which was kind of what we're supposed to do here. But here's why I didn't, though, is because data backup used to be the be all end all, right? It was it. If you had your data backed up, you had either a tape drive or a local hard drive that you swapped. Then we started introducing some cloud storage to that, and then it's a hybrid. But that was all when the data all lived in house, and now kind of the point of this exercise is the data is all over the place. We are only talking about 6 processes, 6 applications, and all of them but the on-prem server could live locally. It could live in a cloud, and then which cloud, right? Because this gets complicated, right? So, and that's why the point of this exercise is, so many people say, well, we went to the cloud, everything's safe, everything's fine. Right now we just don't know where it is. Now we just don't know where it is. That's great. How do we protect it? So if we're going to talk about QuickBooks on-prem, that's easy. We protect it with a data back. I say it's easy. It is easy, but it is also very critical, very important to monitor closely. Backups run silently, and a lot of times they make mistakes or they stop running silently as well. So you better have a good backup that's being monitored and tested. Test restores, at least go look at your data on there. Look at their reports at a minimum. But ideally, you're doing test restores and, like, they call them tabletop exercises, right? Where we what does the process look like, and let's role play it. Okay. Fire drills. Yeah, exactly. Now, cloud QuickBooks Online. How are we protecting that one?
We're trusting that Intuit is backing up your data. But one thing you got to remember, and I haven't actually tested this recently, but when we're talking about backups, we're always talking, in case of a hacker, gains access, you want to have a backup of your data. Well, what about if you accidentally messed up your data yourself? What if you accidentally you thought you were deleting, something you didn't need, but you ended up needing it? No hackers was involved, but you may have to restore to something. Now, right. I'm pretty sure QuickBooks Online does let you do your own backup.
It does.
You're right.
Yep.
So backups, I always tell people, I'm like, listen, we're going to back up your stuff. If it's a server, we're backing it up every 2 hours, and we're storing it locally. We're storing it on the cloud. But once it goes to the cloud, it gets replicated to another cloud. But if you feel like you would like to back up your own QuickBooks or your own, stuff like that, go ahead. You can never have enough backups.
And have too many. Yeah, for sure.
Backups are like the only one thing that you could never have too many of. I can't think of anything else that you could have too many of besides money.
I agree 100% with you, and I'm going to add something to that. You have to be careful where you store that backup. Because when we're getting back into cybersecurity, we're going to export. We just talked about how sensitive and critical this data is. And now we're going to export it. And by the way, when you do a QBO backup, QuickBooks Online backup, it comes out in the form of an Excel spreadsheet. So that's very accessible data. So we have to be careful with it. Again, it comes down to process. And then I would say, if you're going to do that, it wouldn't be a bad idea to build yourself a sample QuickBooks Online account, just a trial or whatever. Have a second account and try an import of it. And make sure that your backups are accurate.
You could always create free trials. They're always offering free trials.
Right. So do an export, do an import, and then be careful where you store that data in transit and in the meantime at rest. So it gets complicated, Mario. This I've said before, this is not a do-it-yourself industry. Cybersecurity is not a do-it-yourself. Get somebody to help you out with this stuff. But regardless, the first step, and this is really the point I want to make, is just to start diagramming this out. Find out where your information lives. Find out what's being stored, where it's being stored, how it's being protected. And it doesn't take very long before, into this process where somebody's going to say, okay, I guess I do have information that's important and needs to be protected. It's really easy to say, I don't have anything the bad guys are after, until we start doing this exercise. So I'm going to kind of cut this off here because, like I said, this could go on forever. This is not a simple process.
But to kind of answer your original comment, is people, and we hear it all the time, people say, well, I don't have anything that, the hackers are going to want, or anything that I need. A lot of time, yeah, every single time, the hackers don't give a shit about what data they're taking from you. They don't want your data. You want your data. It's like your children. They don't want your children. You want your children.
Right. Good
and
point.
I think I stole
Good
that
point.
from you. But there's always something. Even if you're a plumber, you're mostly just get a call. You go on site. You create a work order. You take a check. Take cash. You need to keep track of. Most of them are keeping track of those. Landscapers. They could have, landscapers is an industry that can have like 100 employees, and the whole time they only have one computer. They have one computer where the daughter of the owner does billing once a month, and stuff like that. But they're creating invoices. They need to see who has paid them. They probably just need their weed whackers and their lawnmowers and stuff like that. But that, they need to know who, sometimes they may not even remember who their customers are. If you just ask them, like, don't look at your QuickBooks, tell me all your customers. They're not going to remember.
Right. You made a. Oh, sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
Go ahead.
You brought something to my attention that. Okay, so in our industry, and you and I are members of this great big peer group, right, where we interface with IT companies all over the country, all over the world, really. And one thing I hear all the time is, we define our target audience, and one of the favorite things guys like us do is cut it off at a minimum, like a minimum of $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month, a minimum of 5 users, 10 users. But you just talked about somebody like a landscaping company that might have 100 employees and one computer. Most IT companies aren't going to help them. That puts them in kind of a tough spot, right? And so I'm just throwing it out there. Now, I'm not going to put you on the spot. I'm not going to ask if you do that. I will say that I don't have a minimum. And I'm also going to say it's really hard to make money on these little tiny companies. And little tiny, by the way, they could be doing a shit ton of money in revenue, but it's hard for us to display the value of that in, if I do a cybersecurity offering that's $50, $60, $70 a month per workstation, and this great big company only has 1 or 2 workstations, but this information is still super valuable, super critical to them, and valuable to criminals, right? So I don't know that I even have an answer to it. Do you have any comments on that, Mario?
I mean, we get all the time, like, people that call us, like, either home users, because even if it's not a business, like a home user, like,
right,
they want, they do, they have pictures of their grandkids and stuff like that, and we're not gonna, be able to help them, but we usually know somebody that would be able to help.
Okay.
So you
have a referral.
We refer to some people. Now that I know that you have a minimum, you'll probably be my referral person. But they still have you're right. They still need protection, and they need somebody. And even though we may not be able to help them, we'd be more than happy to try to get them the help that they need.
Right. And this kind of, so this is one of the things I talk a lot about. Technology. I'm kind of a tech junkie. I'll talk a lot about that. I love business. That's really my first love. I just kind of cheat on business with technology. It's my mistress. But what I don't talk a lot about is why business is so almost personal. So I love it. It's just in my DNA that I love it. But it's a little bit personal in that my parents have run small businesses 2 different times. The first time it was not a good outcome, and then the second time it was better. But I still I've watched that struggle. I've watched my blood, lose everything, and so where I can't make myself cut off these small companies is because of that. And I love, like, if you don't do it, at least you've got that referral partner, and I love to hear that, because most of the stuff we talk about here on the podcast does apply to smaller companies, but also it can be very, very challenging for them to find an IT company that will do good quality work for that small organization. So yeah, I don't know. This is just like a side note.
Yeah. And the thing is, and we will still talk to them. We'll see what they need. We see if they, I actually have a client of mine, very small, 4 users, but they're construction. They do like smaller construction. That company, that 4 user, referred me to a relative of theirs that's one of the biggest customers that we have now, that's over 60 users. So sometimes if every, and also it depends on, like, we may not go after the smaller customers, but some of them, sometimes they come to us, and sometimes we'll help them, sometimes we'll find them a happy home.
Right. Okay. And I'm gonna come back to this, because I want one more point I want to make before we get off of this little simple spreadsheet idea, where we, again, I'm going to state the columns. So your key business application or function, process, whatever you want to call it, is column 1. Column 2 is what type of data is involved. And basically, what we're trying to determine is how important is it, both to you and potentially to the bad guys. Column 3 is where is that data stored. And at its simplest, cloud or on-prem, but also in more complicated, sometimes we've got to know geographically where it's stored in the cloud environment. There are regulations that don't allow it to be stored overseas, for example. And then 4th is the process for backing it up and restoring it. And where that gets touchy, so we did QuickBooks Online as an example, and it's very simple to go export the data out of QuickBooks Online. You can take that data, you can import it into QuickBooks Desktop, you can archive it, you can sample restore with it, whatever. But other applications, names I'm going to hold and not publish, don't allow you to back up your own data out of their system. And so you made the comment that we have to trust them. And I would argue that that's a risky strategy. So one thing that, so we're, as a company, we do a fair amount in compliance. And one of the assessments we can run is called a vendor risk assessment. Have you ever heard of those, Mario?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. This, I don't know how often this gets done. It's not something that we get requested to do very often. But it is, it's pretty thorough, where you just basically have to go through, and it is still a trust, but it's a trust but verify, where you go and you ask your vendors a series of questions of, do you do this and how do you do it? Everything from data backup to training your employees, cybersecurity awareness training for your employees. And so I would say that, the kind of the bonus point here is, if you have cloud vendors where you cannot personally back up and verify the data, then at a minimum, run a vendor risk assessment on them and find out how they're doing it so that you can comfortably trust them. Thoughts on that one?
No, I completely agree. I mean, and also sometimes you kind of need to test them, like, depending on what it is, delete something that you don't really need and see if they can bring it back. Yeah.
Good point. Especially if you have to delete something anyways. Call them and tell them it was an accident. I need it back. Get it back.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I do think that it's really easy to fall into this trap, that because we have a cloud provider, that they've got it figured out. But guess what? They're just humans, right? They're just people that are overwhelmed, stressed, underpaid, overworked, and everything else like we are. And we hope they're doing it, but we don't really know. So, okay.
And at the minimum, know, like, sometimes you just need the knowledge just to know that, like, if you delete something, like, they may tell you, no, we can't restore you.
Right.
You know,
Well, at least you have
just
that information.
yeah, you know that if they can do it or not.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Because then you can build a process around that. And this comes back to, we're going to jump shortly to the formula. And we really do need these processes around the worst case scenarios. So before we go there, let's talk about we do a weekly business tip. And one of the things we talked about before we jumped on the call, Mario, was the client analytics and profitability. And you had mentioned that in a meeting you were with a mutual mentor of ours, that she had brought this up. Tell me, and we'll keep this pretty short. Let's try to do this in like a minute or two. Tell me what it was that she pointed out we need to be doing.
She pretty much, and she preaches this all the time. You have to know your numbers. You have to know which customer is profitable, which one is not. Like in our business, we'll have, clients that are not that profitable. They're opening up a lot of tickets. They're on an older plan. You may have given them a discount somewhere. They may not want like the full security or something. Essentially, if that customer is not profitable, you can't be afraid to cut ties with them. You may lose like some money in the monthly, but sometimes that money is not worth the juice is not worth the squeeze. So if you you could always maybe increase like have a price increase on like a couple other customers, maybe if it's just 5%, and they were slightly profitable, now you've made it up, or got it even. But sometimes you have a customer that is just taking up too much of your time, and if you're not making money off of them, don't feel scared to cut ties with them.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you, and God, that's hard.
It is.
I've got clients, and especially where I just talked about how, I will take on smaller clients where it is harder to be profitable. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's harder. You have to do things really smart. You have to be careful because those relationships, those clients can suck you dry if you're not careful. So know your numbers, know what you're up against. Analytics. This is, I think it's like nobody's going to say, "Oh my God, I never thought of that," to run your business by your numbers. But doing it, actually executing on that can be a different story. And knowing what the proper numbers are, like just even knowing what numbers you should be looking at can be a challenge. So I might make a plug here for EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. If you're not, and I'm talking to our audience here, if you're not using some sort of a business coaching platform or they call this an operating system, which I kind of love. I highly recommend it. It's easy, it's simple, easy to wrap your brain around, and it does help you kind of deep dive into these numbers and get a handle on what data points you should be looking at. So, all right, let's move to kind of close this thing up here. We're 48 minutes in, according to my timer here. So time to wrap up. Mario, this is where I like to bring the whole thing home because for years I've been talking about this 97% number, which I stole, to be fair, that 97% of breaches are preventable with basic security measures. And it's just the stuff we talk about week after week. If you do this, most likely you're not going to get breached. Most likely. And 97%, that's pretty solid. However, we've got so much riding on the line that I'm not comfortable with that 3% gap. I don't want it for me, and I don't want it for my clients. So the 97%, it's not easy, but it is simple. We need to protect our technology. That means antivirus, firewalls, that sort of thing, two-factor authentication. We need to protect our data, which means data backup, which is what we talked about today. We need to protect our people. This is education, cybersecurity awareness training. Get those three things in line, do them right, do them according to best practices, and most likely we're not going to get breached, right? Most of the breaches we talk about, they were failing in one of those areas. Now, because that's not enough, we wrap it up with how we close that gap is policies and procedures. Number one, making sure that we have, what to do, what we allow our people to do with our technology. Can they get on Facebook? Can they do, whatever with business computers? Can they bring their own devices? All that kind of stuff. Define how you're going to use technology and make sure everybody understands it. Constantly educate about it. At least once a year, review these. Because what happens a lot of times, people put them in the hiring book, your playbook, when you bring on a new employee that's 150,000 pages long, and you put them in a room and you're like, here, read this and sign when you're done. And if you want that paycheck, God damn it, you better sign that line saying that you've read and understand and agree to everything in here. And then we move on. We got to bring these things back up. We got to make sure people really understand what it is we're telling them they can do and why. And then the final step, go back and listen to episode 27, guys, if you haven't. A phenomenal episode about cybersecurity insurance. Definitely have a good insurance policy in place. That is what makes me feel comfortable that we have this thing wrapped up at 100%. Just don't tell my attorney or my insurance company. Mario, final thoughts, key takeaways, anything else you'd like to say before we close this thing up today?
Well, I have another way you can get to 100% without any of that stuff.
I'm all ears.
Just turn off your internet. If you don't need internet,
go live under a rock.
Exactly. Paper and pen. That's all you need.
I used to do that at the beginning of my webinar. I would play a video that just scared the shit out of people. I'm like, doesn't that make you just want to go like live under a rock somewhere?
Exactly.
Here's some good news. So don't end with that. That's bad news.
No, I'm just kidding. I mean, listen, there's companies we've talked to, there's people we've talked to that, kind of feel like we're too small, or we don't, we've been good so far. It's gonna happen. It's you got to just be ahead of them. You got to be open-minded. Realize, like, we're not doing this because we want your money. We want to do this because we want to help you. We want to make sure that I don't want to sit with somebody, or two people in a week and say, you combined, we've lost a $250,000. Like that.
Right.
I went home and I was like, oh my God, you don't want to go through that. You don't want to, because that's not just going to be a bad day. That's going to be a bad year. And it could be, it could be the end of your business, Right. So just at the very minimums, talk to somebody to see what you have and what you need,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, that's our sign off offer week after week after week. It'll always be here. Go to unhacked.live. You can reach any of us and we'll do these assessments for you. We can run, call it a gap assessment, cybersecurity assessment, but we're going to run you through our basic standard procedures and policies on how we protect you from the Russian hackers. And then we'll give you the roadmap on, the plan for how to get from where you are to protected and without having to live under a rock. So unhacked.live. We are also on social media, YouTube, Facebook, but all those links are on our website, unhacked.live. So go there, schedule an assessment. I am Justin Shelley, CEO of Phoenix IT Advisors. And Mario, thank you again for being here. Go ahead and say goodbye, and then we'll sign off. We'll see you guys next week. Take care, guys.
Mario Zaki, Mastech IT. I appreciate everybody out there, and we look forward to hearing from you guys soon.
All right. Thanks, Mario. We'll see you guys.